The story begins when a portal opens, and without giving people any time to adapt to this absurd phenomenon, monsters start emerging from the portal. A man encounters his son and hugs him. Some people awaken special abilities. The man continues holding his son while a portal is behind him, and a dinosaur is trying to emerge. Peace returns thanks to the work of hunters, but just as people were getting used to the calm, the world is struck by a new trial known as the worst disaster in history, the Portal of Chaos. And even with the combined strength of countless hunters, sealing the portal was impossible, and in the face of this overwhelming threat when humanity faced the extinction crisis, 12 individuals around the world, those with the highest level of power, the legendary hunters, took action. They defeated the catastrophe known as the Portal of Chaos, becoming the heroes who saved humanity. They are the 12 apostles. The Portal of Chaos was closed. Someone looks at their wristwatch and says that the time elapsed since entering the portal. 79 hours, 17 minutes, and 8 seconds. Beast of Destruction eliminated. A girl lies on the ground and says she can't take it anymore. The short-haired girl says that with this, it will take more than 100 years for the Portal of Chaos to open again, and today is the last time the 12 apostles will gather, asking if they have thought about what they will do next. Each one shares what they plan to do, but she notices that the Thunder Emperor is still missing and asks him. The old man says that he looks like someone who hasn't decided yet, and it's not an easy decision, as their power is too much to be controlled by one person. One mistake in the consequences could be irreversible, and if he's still unsure, he asks why they don't search together. The protagonist answers that he will leave everything behind. The old man is surprised, and everyone else is shocked, and the Thunder Emperor asks why they're all so shocked. The angry boy asks if he has any idea of what he just said, and if leaving the hunter life behind, what will he do with his life? The protagonist answers that he will be a writer. Everyone remains surprised. The Thunder Emperor, excited, says that he'll be a web novel author. Elsewhere, a man says that, to quote a passage from his book before starting to write, imagine telling the story to someone right in front of you and make sure that person never gets bored. And remember that in web novels, the number one property is fun, and the second and third, fun. A boy with glasses is watching him and taking notes. 9 months after the closure of the Portal of Chaos, the Thunder Emperor, the boy thinks that it was amazing, and his head is exploding with ideas until someone closes his notebook. His partners say that after a study session, it's natural to go out for a drink. They go ahead, and the protagonist thinks that, for some reason, he's feeling good, and wonders if this is what James Peterson was talking about, the aura of a masterpiece, until the waitress arrives with his rice latte. He tells her to leave it there. The Emperor drinks and thinks that the tank is full again, and it's time to pick up the pace and get through this deadline. He puts on music in his earphones and starts writing, while outside, monsters are throwing people away. And the protagonist continues writing, thinking that he just needs to polish the last line and finish with a bang. The monster raises its tail and the Emperor finishes writing, and suddenly the beast hits the glass, throwing the glasses, earphones, drink, and notebook away with its huge tail. The protagonist stands up and notices his broken notebook, bends down to the ground, lamenting, until he looks up and attacks the monster, emitting a strong light and burning it, throwing it away. The Emperor approaches the beast and says that it still hasn't been beaten enough until suddenly, a woman screams, frightened by the lightning. Meanwhile, a girl is watching TV and thinks the development is amazing, that the main character was electrocuted and eliminated, and dramas are better when they're chaotic. A boy approaches and watches her lying on the couch, and it's the youngest saying to look at the mess. Hong Yo is one of the best Rank S hunters in the country and captain of the 7th Division of Guardian, one of the best guilds. And with her delicate appearance and great fashion sense, she is a star in the hunter world with immense popularity, until someone changes the channel. Yijun asks who would have thought this is Hong. Her sister gets very irritated and says that this was a very important scene and asks why she's ruining her precious day off. The youngest responds that she's an unemployed freelancer. They argue until the phone rings. The latest news? A gate suddenly appeared in the Mapo district, Seoul. Due to the area being designated as a red zone, people must avoid leaving their homes, and citizens outside should move to shelters. Yesio says she's leaving, and her brother asks if she received a summons message. Hong replies no, but thinks it's better to go. Yijun says her main job is legal, as she doesn't have to go, and that he's nearby doing some work. A certain unemployed person, not a bad writer. Meanwhile, the protagonist is sitting on the floor, noticing that his laptop's hard drive is broken, and this was his fate. His first job today should have been the real deal, and he thinks that with his first job, he would have blown up and made an incredible debut as a popular rookie writer, win the Best Web Novel of the Year award, give lectures, and finally start his peak, and says he imagined all of this. He shakes with anger and says that frying a few octopuses won't be enough, And since it's come to this point, he'll make sure to get revenge because he messed with the wrong person and looks for the boss until he finds him and runs toward him, telling him to wait. The guards say the monsters were defeated. They confirmed the evacuation of citizens and will subdue the remaining monsters, urging to finish soon. One of them says to hold on a little longer. They comment that this is too easy for an unexpected gate, and it's all thanks to the overwhelming power of the captain. Seok tells them to stop the chit-chat and get ready to defeat the boss. The guard asks what the problem is, since the captain is rank A, and the gate boss is also rank A, and there's no issue until monster shadows appear on the glass. Seok is distracted, saying they don't know where the enemy might attack from, and tells them to form ranks again until they see the beast preparing to attack. The guards get scared, but suddenly the monster starts dripping blood. The captain looks intently and also notices a body leaking blood. He continues observing and tells them to stay alert. The guards begin attacking with fire. The beasts move and continue attacking. Seok wonders about the monster that appeared and if it could be a gate shift, thinking this is dangerous and they need to call in stronger reinforcements. The guards run from the beast and the monster releases mana. The captain looks surprised seeing her emitting mana, increasingly intense. The guards try to protect themselves until one of them looks and sees the captain with a barrier, thinking they don't have time to wait calmly and they need to buy time until reinforcements arrive. The problem is that the power of a single head is nearly Class A, and if all the heads attack, it's uncertain if they'll survive. Blood starts coming from his mouth, and Seok thinks he can't give up now, as there are people to save, and if he still has strength to fight, he will. Until he looks and uses a powerful impact. Stones fly and the attack hits two heads. The other head watches him. The captain turns around and is hit by acid being thrown. He falls to the ground thinking he could be eliminated there, and if she throws everything, the entire area will disappear. Seok gets very angry until he notices something and wonders what happened. He feels a strong mana approaching the beast, and it's the Emperor with lightning surrounding him, saying he found the boss monster and asks if it knows what it did wrong, and says that if it has a mouth, it might at least try to apologize. The beast moves toward him, and the protagonist asks if it wants to play like this, telling it to swallow this. He attacks with his lightning, saying this is for his notebook, for his manuscript, and that everything was erased because of it, asking how it will fix this, and above all it seems he can't even have his debut. The Emperor keeps attacking, causing a massive explosion, saying that even though he's toasting it, he still doesn't feel better, and the deadline is tomorrow, asking how he'll rewrite this. Meanwhile, the guards, unconscious on the floor, get up dazed, not understanding what just happened, and go to the captain, noticing he's alive, and decide to wait until the rescue team arrives. They will check if the Hydra is eliminated and notice some marks on the beast's body, looking surprised. Seok, still lying down, begins to wake up. In the news, the journalist says that in Korea, a rank A portal appeared suddenly after 2 years. A rank AAA Hydra appeared as the boss, and although it was just a rank A hunter, he fought this monstrous beast alone and emerged victorious. And the hero is the captain known as the Destroyer. The video of the Hydra annihilation posted on YouTube passed 100 million views in an instant, and Ma heroically defeated the monster and saved the citizens from danger. It was confirmed he is on a 14-week rest, along with permanent vocal cord damage, and the vocal cord damage was due to an insult he shouted at the Hydra at the critical moment. The television is turned off and several people are gathered with a voice saying they saw it, and Seok, who defeated a rank AAA Hydra, should be recruited into the Guardian Guild immediately. They discuss the matter. Hong thinks of Ihyun and insults him in her thoughts, wondering what he thinks he's doing and if he doesn't know the meaning of the word moderation. She thinks that if Do suspects that it was the Thunder Emperor who cleaned the gate, things will get complicated. An old man asks if they really believe a single hunter handled it and says he doesn't think so. Yo realizes that he noticed right away, and the guildmaster asks if she disagrees. Hong pretends not to know what he's talking about. Do says that a rank A defeating a rank AA Hydra reminds him of a legendary hunter, one who ignored everything and disappeared without a trace, and now decides to show up, which is the Thunder Emperor, and he'll meet him personally. Meanwhile, the protagonist is trembling with nervousness. A man calls him over, placing a tablet on the table. It's the editor saying that he thinks it's possible to continue this way, but it's not interesting. The setting is good, but again, all the monsters are defeated in a single attack, which is unrealistic. If it continues like this, readers won't be able to stay immersed, and they will lose interest and drop the work. The protagonist responds that he tried his best to make it interesting. Gu reads aloud what was written, sighs and says he's not asking for more detailed descriptions, and asks if he watched the morning news, where a guardian hunter saved people at an unexpected gate and almost got eliminated doing it. He tells him to imagine that a mere hunter, who wasn't even high rank, risking his life to protect ordinary people, and asks how intense and desperate that battle must have been. He says that even without witnessing it personally, people can still feel it. And that's why everyone will remember the name of the hunter, even if they weren't there. It felt like they were there, like they watched it and understood the heart of the person. Empathy and immersion, that's realism. The emperor looks surprised, saying he never thought of it that way and apologizes. The editor observes him and says he seems to have understood, so he'll give him another week and he needs to revise it by then. Jan says this time he'll do it right. Gu says he'll have to, and if it's not interesting next time, he should be prepared for the contract to be cancelled. The protagonist, sweating a lot, wonders about the contract cancellation. In another location, he enters his house, and his brother is playing a game, asking if he just got back. The emperor lies on the couch. Yujin observes and says he's going to break the floor, asking what happened this time. Jan responds that even he doesn't know what's going on. After a while, still in the same place, the youngest understands that if he doesn't review it correctly, the contract will be cancelled and he has to make sure it's realistic. But he doesn't know how to write like that. The protagonist responds affirmatively. Yujin asks about what was written earlier. He responds that he's not sure, but it made him eliminate 30 rank A monsters with a single attack. But they say it's unrealistic, and not even a rank S, just a rank A, and ask why that wouldn't be possible. The youngest sighs and asks if he's ever fought properly in his life. The emperor replies that yes, it was during the Chaos Gate incident, fighting against waves of monsters for 70 hours straight, and it was exhausting. Yujin asks if he's really going to use this as an example, saying that there are 12 hunters in the world, and most hunters in this world are between rank F and rank C. Reaching rank A means having more money than you can spend, and rank S hunters don't just gain talent but power, and they have a higher position than a CEO of a big company, and that's just for rank S. He asks if he thinks people can relate to a story about a legendary hunter, and continues explaining that readers project themselves onto the protagonist, so they prefer stories where characters start at levels similar to theirs and get stronger over time. To write this kind of story, he needs to do research and watch normal hunters fight. The protagonist asks if he's not a hunter now. The youngest stands up and asks what he should do with this trash, and the emperor begs for his help. Yujin asks why he doesn't go to the Korean Hunters Association, because if it's him, the president of the association would help with anything, as he's the Thunder Emperor, the only legendary one in Korea who faced destruction monsters. Yeon agrees. In another place, the president slams his hand on the table and asks how this even makes sense. He says that since the second-class earthquake warning last year, they've been consistently clearing national gates and also confirmed the success of training for hunters. And even in France, where an entire city was at risk of destruction due to a gate, they were able to resolve it with their support. When Germany asked veteran hunters to share their experiences in hunter training, they also provided assistance. He asks if they are still saying that the rank improvement adjustment is being rejected, and says that this is absurd. The president of the Indian Association says that it is due to the lack of legendary hunters, and that 11 nations, including India, can provide support with legendary hunters. But it's not impossible for South Korea, and asks if the Thunder Emperor of Korea hasn't retired for no reason. And that doesn't mean national-level power can just disappear without cause. The president responds that this is personal freedom. The Indian president replies that he understands and that he might allow a rank improvement in such a situation. And only countries that have legendary hunters can qualify for the first-class national hunter rank. And that's where it will end for today. And the discussion about South Korea's rank adjustment will be reviewed next time. The president becomes very irritated and insults them, throwing papers away saying they are limiting him. The secretary approaches, saying there is still one more agenda scheduled. The president asks what's next on the agenda, and the secretary replies that it's one of the guilds that responded to the proposal for field collaboration he sent, and it's the Scorpion Guild that has a meeting with them. They are famous for their low quality, and there are even rumors that they secretly absorb rival guilds. It's obvious they are using the association's support as an excuse to monopolize high-level gates, and getting involved with such people will damage the association's reputation. The president interrupts and says they are the Korean Hunters Association, and if they are an officially recognized guild, they should respond to the meeting. He thinks that he said this, but he's also not convinced, and if they accept this guild, other guilds will try to pressure the association. The guard is on the phone asking if this guy showing up isn't a once-in-a-lifetime event, saying that even using force, he's forcing his way in, and explains to the president that someone is making a scene in the hall saying he wants to see the association president. Something about being the son of a convenience store owner or something like that. The president says that now even the son of a convenience store owner dares to underestimate him. The guard says he kept saying if they mention the convenience store, they'll understand. The president asks what was said and starts connecting the dots, realizing it's the retired legendary hunter, and says he'll go down immediately. He runs out. A black car stops. Joe gets out. A voice says that for the famous Park to agree to a meeting, it means that the Scorpion Guild's reputation is soaring. Joe agrees, until the president finally arrives and asks where he is. Jinham says he must be in a hurry to run like this and greets him. Park pushes him aside and says to let him in immediately, asking if they even know who this person is. He finds the boy and apologizes for the delay. The protagonist replies that he thought he wouldn't be able to see him. The president says he received the message about his arrival too late and asks why he came to see him. He answers that he has something to discuss. Park wonders if it's about the return and thinks that even after retiring, the Hunters Association always kept an eye on the Thunder Emperor. And now, with a country having a legendary hunter again, they can show status to the world. Yan says to let him observe. The president says he was waiting for him to say that and will prepare for observation right away, until he realizes he used the word observe. And the protagonist says to let him watch closely how common hunters fight, and if he lets him do that, he will give him a request. Still in the same place, Park says he will summarize the contract, that if they cooperate in research for the writing activities, he's saying he will act as the Thunder Emperor. Yan replies that yes and asks if there's a way to observe. The president says yes, and it just so happens there's a job that fits exactly what he wants, and thinks that if the boy joins, not only will the ranking go up, but they can expand to the global stage again, and they can't miss this opportunity, and says it's called Gate Assistant. The protagonist doesn't understand much. The president explains that it's a job done by Rank F hunters, and they collect loot that hunters obtain, secure escape routes in emergencies, and in critical situations, they might even participate in combat, though real fights rarely happen. Most of the time, they just wait in the rear, and it seems like the perfect job to observe common hunters. The Emperor says he didn't know a job like that existed. Park thinks it's natural that he doesn't know about them and that they can't be sent to fields where even national rank hunters have been eliminated. Yan says that's exactly what he wanted. The president asks if it's okay to be an assistant. The protagonist says to send the details to the Thunder Emperor's convenience store until he jumps out, breaking the glass. Elsewhere, the Emperor says he has arrived. He observes and realizes this is the Rank C Guild, Harmonia, and he will learn about the real world of hunters here, writing a story full of real experiences. Yan opens the door and says he's the new assistant there. The hunters are sitting calmly, fiddling with their phones, and ask if the gate assistant was supposed to arrive today. And they say the assistant just arrived. Things are a bit hectic. The protagonist thinks that this is what a real guild looks like. The hunter introduces himself as Man Seong, the guild master. The emperor introduces himself as well. The master says that, including the two of them, there are only 3 members, and the third was dispatched. Yan thinks it's like when one of the 12 apostles is sent to other countries. Man says he's pretty unlucky to end up in a place like this. The protagonist starts taking notes on everything they say. The hunter says they're stuck at rank C forever, so they don't make much money and are crawling day by day. The two start arguing. The emperor says they're pretty close and seem like longtime companions. The master says they've been through ups and downs, but he's tired of it. Yan says they live and work together, and that's incredible, and they're real hunters. The hunters say they have that veteran air about them. The protagonist says that this level of team camaraderie in battles must be amazing, and asks when they're going to a gate. The hunters don't understand much and say they don't have any expeditions planned. The emperor doesn't understand and asks if this isn't a hunter guild. They respond yes, but low-rank guilds don't get many expeditions. Yan asks what to do. He responds nothing. The protagonist thinks it's not like gates open every day, and this is all part of realism, and says he'll do anything, he just wants a job. The hunter says to clean here. The two start arguing, and the emperor says he can do it, thinking that with a week until the contract is cancelled, he will gather all the realism he needs before then. The next day, Yan opens the door and asks about today's agenda. Man says he can clean the hallway. The next day, the protagonist opens the door and asks about a gate that opened. The hunter responds, no. The emperor asks what he does today. The hunter hands him a cloth. Then, Yan goes to clean the glass. The next day, he enters the door again, and Man hands him a broom. The protagonist looks exhausted. And the next day, he's sitting, thinking he's screwed, and says that the first day was one thing, but all he did was clean, and he hasn't even touched the manuscript. The deadline is coming, and he hasn't written a single word. Elsewhere, Gu is sitting in front of this computer, and someone hands him a drink. It's the secretary, asking if he's working overtime again because of the rookie. The editor responds he's reporting an incident. The employee says if he's in charge, it's a sure bet for the best ranks, and asks why he would deal with this rookie since he heard he's not even a decent writer. Gu responds that he doesn't know why either, just that his writing seems desperate and like blind hope at this point, and it's his last hope. Meanwhile, on the last day of the contract cancellation, the protagonist is exhausted and still has nothing written. He realizes he's screwed and asks about being fired. The hunters say they're going to an emergency portal this afternoon. The Emperor looks surprised and excitedly asks if it's a mission in the portal, thinking he'll finally see real hunters and will finally be able to write. He gets emotional until he notices something and asks why the two of them look worried. The hunter responds that it's because the portal is rank B. Jan thinks it seems so easy. The hunter says that for a rank C guild like theirs, it's impossible to clean a portal like that alone. So 3 guilds decided to work together. The protagonist asks if that wouldn't decrease the danger. Man responds yes, but the problem is the guild they're teaming up with. In the province, at the Soksan Gate in the Wolf Valley, the hunters are talking, while the Emperor is observing every detail of their location and asking questions to the hunters. The 2 hunters watch, not understanding anything, until someone approaches them. And it's the Bear Guild. They say that this is the first and only philanthropist in the guild world, and they've heard they train rookies very well. So other guilds come and take them away. They must be really foolish to create guild members and send them to others. The hunter asks who he thinks hunted their recruits, and how dare he open his mouth to another guildmaster, and if stealing members isn't enough, if he wants to fight the guildmaster too. The Wild Bear Guild says he's gotten bold and is interrupting a conversation between adults. The hunter responds that all he sees is an idiot trying to make trouble. The Mantis Guild also approaches and asks about the foolish rivalry between the weaklings and if they're sure they want to waste their energy there, saying they'll be busy supporting the guild when they enter the gate, even picking up some scraps and need to do a good job assisting. The protagonist watches from afar and thinks it's crazy, a heated fight like this just before entering the gate, and this is reality. Then an employee hits him, asking if he's not going to greet them, saying these rookies are lazy and if they touch any monster they catch, they'll be eliminated. The Emperor looks with his intimidating gaze. The employee gets scared, and Jan says he'll be careful and is looking forward to working together. The assistant runs off saying he's also looking forward to it. The 2 hunters say they're going in now and that he should stay alert and not get eliminated. Inside the gate, a beast is about to attack. Man raises his sword to attack, but Richard steps in front and eliminates the beast first. Man gets irritated and Bear says if he didn't like it, he should leave. The hunter attacks a beast and is about to land the final blow, but Richard pushes him aside, attacking his target and pretending not to have seen him. The protagonist wonders if this is really how common hunters fight because it's a mess. The hunters argue among themselves over the target and even start attacking each other. The Emperor thinks he's never seen anything like this and wonders what kind of senseless fight this is. Ryong says it's easy, and that's why having exclusive rights is better, because they can form any strategy they want and let these insects deal with the small fish, while their guild will only handle the boss. And right then, the boss of this portal appears. The Mantis Guild takes positions, and their leader says that once they defeat it, the promotion to rank B will be a matter of time because they're no longer at the insect level. The guild charges toward the beast and attacks, making several cuts and eliminating it. Sama places his foot on the beast and says, "This is the taste of changing life and no one can underestimate him now." Suddenly, an even bigger beast appears. They look scared and ask if it's the End Wolf and why a rank A monster is there. The protagonist observes and thinks it reminds him of when they were cleaning up that rank S gate. The beast emits a loud sound and moves quickly, throwing the guild members away. Ryong looks in shock and can't believe it. His guild members start running until the gate shift happens, an unforeseen event where a high-level boss monster appears, causing the gate level to rise. The hunter looks in shock, asking if this is rank A, because for rank B hunters, it's an insurmountable talent barrier. The hunters are filled with fear. The survival probability for rank C hunters in a rank B gate is even lower than a normal person surviving a gate. The beasts attack the hunters, biting them. Some hunters run away. Ryong can't understand why it appeared right there and thinks that after everything he did to get here, he can't be eliminated like this. He jumps toward the monster but is attacked, getting thrown away. The other hunters try to run and call for help. Others fall to the ground. Richard runs and pushes the people in front of him until a voice tells them to pay attention, and it's Man saying that a gate shift is immediately reported to the association. And if they hold their ground, they can get out alive. If they run and hide well, they might be rescued by hunters sent by the association. And he'll buy as much time as he can while everyone else escapes. The hunters look at him in surprise and start thanking him and apologizing at the same time. The guildmaster of Harmonia thinks they can't win against this monster, but at least he can buy some time for the others to evacuate. Then someone approaches and asks if he's trying to act all heroic alone, saying anyone would think the 12 apostles have arrived. Since that's the case, they're going to leave in style. Man asks if he's okay being eliminated like this. His partner responds that it's not like the end is certain, so it's better to stop acting like a protagonist in a war movie. The master calls for the rookie and says he should run too, apologizing for bringing him there. The protagonist thinks he understands now that some can't run to survive and some end up falling, and even then, it's a battlefield where people fight prepared for the end. And this is reality. He thanks the team. The two hunters fall to the ground, unable to land any hits, and are confronted with lightning being emitted. The Emperor leaps, removes his glasses, and says it's cover obtained, activating the Thunder Wheel, causing a massive impact with 5% of his power, destroying everything around. The two hunters look surprised, and Yon is impressed, saying that was pretty cool until the beast is still alive. He attacks it again easily, saying he learned a lot from them until the two hunters recognize him. The protagonist says his deadline is approaching and he needs to leave now, asking them to keep this a secret and take care of the injured. He leaves the location and the two hunters are left confused about what just happened. The rescue team arrives saying that an explosion was confirmed and two individuals are conscious, and they should prioritize rescuing the injured. In the newspaper, the news announces that a gate shift occurred, altering the rank of a gate. Thankfully, the hunters in the field were rescued safely. The editor is sitting in front of the computer, with 1 minute left before the contract is canceled and his phone vibrates. He picks it up and notices it's the protagonist who sent a document, saying he sent it with only a minute to spare, barely making the deadline. Then Gu begins to read the writing and is surprised, getting interested and continuing to read, asking if this is interesting. A few days later, a boy is screaming in the middle of the street. A child on the street asks his mother if this guy is a hunter, and she simply tells him to close his eyes. The boy says that the guys are going to go crazy, thinking it's because he returned as a rank C, and it's been 6 months since he was sent to his cousin's rank B guild. There were trials blocking his way, but each one was a step toward growth. After endless training day and night, he finally reached the limits of a rank D hunter. He remembers the Harmonia Guild and gets closer to the location, wondering why it's so quiet as they know he arrives today. He thinks it might be a surprise and approaches quietly as well. When he opens the door, he faces the protagonist and both ask each other's identity. The Emperor introduces himself as a gate assistant. The boy asks if that means this is the lowest rank, and he responds that it is. The redhead says he was just promoted and is now rank C and wants to teach him a few things. Meanwhile, the two hunters from the Harmonia Guild talk about the newcomer being the Emperor. They keep walking and talking. Man wants to know why this guy came to their guild, and since he revealed his identity before leaving, he's sure he won't see him again. The hunter next to him says that if someone like that is in their guild, they'll be able to clear high-ranking dungeons easily. The master says that's not the point, and asks if they understand how dangerous this mission was because portal changes happen due to the mana levels of the participating hunters, and the newcomer caused this. Having him nearby means that every portal is a life-or-death situation, and they can't take risks since he still has a family to support. The hunter pushes his face, which was too close, and says he was just speaking hypothetically, like the Emperor always did. They open the door and someone interrupts them because the two inside their dormitory are arguing. The redhead tells them not to worry as he's lucky to know him and will make him a rank A hunter, but to do that, he needs to master the basics first. The first lesson is cleaning. He looks back and faces the guild members, hitting him and not stopping. Yon doesn't understand what's happening, but at least the last manuscript was good, and he remembers the editor saying he improved a lot, with the selfishness of the hunters turning the battlefield into hell, and the main character throwing himself into danger for his companions. Desperation created all of this and left a big impression, and if he keeps improving like this, the debut won't be a problem. The protagonist keeps wondering about the debut and thinks his chance has finally come. In real time, he thinks coming here was the right choice, and he will do more research and take advantage of this momentum for his debut. The hunters ask what he's writing. The master thinks he's keeping track of their sins and will take revenge. The Emperor says he has something for them. He approaches quickly and they fear being hit. Man gets desperate, saying he has a family to support. Yon says it's a portal freedom pass, and with that they will face a portal together as a full team. The master says that with Yong there are 4 and asks if he's going too. The protagonist answers yes, and that he would like to participate formally. Man is left speechless. While Choi is sitting on the floor outside, they're inside talking, and the Emperor is explaining his research, saying he should become a member of the Gawaman Saseong Guild. The master says he understands his reasons and also understands why he wants to be there, but being a legendary hunter working in a C-rank guild is a bit until someone interrupts and says they accept. Man gets irritated. The hunter says he's not joking and asks if they remember when the guild started. He says there were just 5 clueless guys joining together. Now, they have 10 members and spent years having a lot of fun, dreaming of reaching the top. But one by one, they left in search of reality, eventually conforming to the life they have. He asks if, deep down, they're not still holding on to the dream and says he wants to help. The person in front of him is not the Emperor of Thunder, but a child chasing his dream. And this is a great opportunity for their guild. They ask if they shouldn't give him a chance, for the love of Chiho if nothing else, and they will do it. The newcomer is not joining as the Emperor of Thunder, but as an aspiring web novel writer and a gate assistant. The guildmaster stays silent, observing the picture of his family and his former partners. He sighs and says it's a dream. That's fine, and the newcomer is in. He's looking forward to working together. Meanwhile, a black car passes by with someone inside talking on the phone, saying they're sure about the assistant the guildmaster mentioned, and they will find him. Meanwhile, in another location, the protagonist is writing, super excited, finding dramatic language. The waiter asks what he's doing there, and the man replies to just leave him alone as he's bringing in good sales, until someone arrives at their location. The Emperor looks startled when he sees Do approaching, and telling the staff he has business with the boy sitting there, and asks if they could clean the store. If they give them 30 minutes, they'll be generously compensated. The staff begins cleaning the place, and the Guardian Guildmaster calls for the boy, saying he's been running away from him all this time. Amana moves, Yon notices, takes off his earphones, and looks back, encountering the old man. Do hugs him and says it's been a long time since he's seen him, and he's been wanting to see him. But then, he steps back due to the lightning. The protagonist says he's writing a novel and not to disturb him. The guildmaster says he's as stubborn as always, but this time, he won't let him stop him. He ignored all his calls after retiring. The Emperor responds that he got calls all the time and lost a lot of sleep because of him. Do says that if he had shown up once in a while, there wouldn't have been a reason to call so much, and asks if that's how he treats his grandfather. He replies that the old man isn't really his grandfather, and now that he's seen him, that's enough because he needs to write. The master sits down and wants to know something, so he asks why he returned as a hunter. The old man realizes the boy isn't even listening and starts talking about the last shoes he asked to buy the last time. Even the top-ranked hunters around the world had trouble getting them, but he managed to get them for him and ensured 3 pairs, which wasn't easy. Yon shuts his notebook and says he needed a gate assistant identity for research, so he made a deal with the president to return as a hunter. Do asks why he didn't go to Sohoman. The protagonist responds that it's because it's too strong and unrealistic. The guildmaster asks about the word realism. The Emperor smiles and asks if that's why the naturally stronger hunters don't understand, and how could they understand the real world of regular hunters. The old man says that if he joins Sohoman, he'll give up his position as heir, and he replies that he already has a guild. Do stands up and asks what he just said. He answers that he already joined a guild and that they can stop talking about them. The master starts laughing and says he lost this round and that guild must be trying to recruit him, and they should just buy them. Yaon says he just became an official member and that they shouldn't try anything. The old man says he knows he couldn't stop him, even if he wanted to. Do touches his shoulder and says to listen carefully because now that he's back, someone will find out who he really is, and that could lead to danger. The protagonist replies that he's not afraid. The master says that the people around him aren't that strong. He remembers the boy on top of a monster. After defeating it, the old man watches him intently, smiles, and says that if things don't go well, he can go to Sohoman. He turns around and walks out of the place smiling, thinking the boy really seems to be alive again. Do steps outside and asks the secretary how much they spent to acquire the coffee that time. She replies it was about $1 billion. The master asks how much it would cost to buy a publication from the company. He closes the car door. Meanwhile, a guy is talking on the phone saying he's sure he was with Do. Joe asks if he met with the association president and Do, and still, he's just a nobody with rank F. They talk about how the old man still treated him like a grandson, and wonder if it's true that he has a hidden grandson. People are watching and say the target just left the cafe and they're proceeding with the mission. A voice says to tell them the plan to eliminate him was cancelled until suddenly, someone runs over the protagonist. His glasses fly off. A guy approaches, asking what the hell this is and if he's the Emperor of Sword's grandson, and says he didn't know that. The guy who ran him over says he must be eliminated now until they face a boy standing in front of the car watching them. They ask who this monster is. One jumps out of the car and asks if this boy wasn't just a rank F gate assistant. The Thunder Emperor doesn't understand why a car suddenly appeared. The 2 guys run toward him to attack and try to hit him, but Yon dodges and emits his lightning on both, throwing them far away. The protagonist watches them until he looks startled, saying he didn't want to do this and asks if they are okay. He panics about someone having seen it until someone shouts that it's the Emperor of Swords. He looks back and sees several people. Yon feels relieved and says that his grandfather can be useful sometimes, and notices that the 2 guys on the ground are hunters. He wants to know why they attacked him and wonders if he should ask Uncle Day about this. The rescue team approaches the scene to take the 2 injured. The president says he didn't know they were reckless, didn't expect them to go this far, and these guys crossed the line. He knows them well and is aware that they are infamous for being bad. He remembers back and says that the thugs he encountered are from the Scorpion Guild and have been known as a dangerous guild for years. After the boy retired, they were one of the guilds that supported the Korean Association, which was low on funds. He says Joe is the master of the Scorpion Guild, infamous for not caring about the means or methods as long as he gets what he wants. Recently, there was a meeting, but he abandoned it when the boy appeared and probably now seeks revenge. Park continues, saying that since he can't touch him, the association president has the boy as a target, who is registered as rank F. The protagonist starts emitting a very intense mana. The president thinks that just being near him, his heart feels like it's going to explode. Park starts trembling, papers fly, and this is the Thunder Emperor. The president tells him to calm down and says that if he's worried about the guild they're in right now, he'll do everything to ensure they don't suffer any loss and needs to calm down now. Jan thinks this is the peak of reality. The competition among hunters continues even outside the gates, and if they get in their way, they'll just attack and eliminate him. And if the main character overcomes all of this and grows, how fun would that be? He stops emitting the large mana and says he's fine now. The president asks if he's serious. The protagonist responds yes and says that he thinks things will get interesting. Elsewhere, Joe says he told them to cancel the operation, and if they were going to do it, they needed to make sure to eliminate him properly, but instead, he got beaten up and taken away in an ambulance, asking if they still call themselves Scorpion. They respond that they thought he might have had a bodyguard since, after the lightning struck, he disappeared in an instant. The master of the Scorpion Guild hits him with a punch and throws him away, asking what he's talking about with just a small spark of electricity. Anne says they call themselves Scorpion, but they can't even handle a child. Jinim insults them and thinks that now the child's assistant is no longer the problem. And if he really is the grandson of the Emperor of Swords, he'll make his move. The master of the four great guilds, the Emperor of Swords, and the action has already been taken, and stopping now won't change anything. He asks if the assistant has a guild. The members respond that yes, it's a C-rank guild. Joe says they're going to buy all the gates they are bidding for and needs to make sure no guild will accept him because now that they've come this far, they'll go all the way and kidnap one of his family members. Elsewhere, Hong is leaving, saying that the world has become a better place these days since she can even buy ice cream in the middle of the night. And she gets distracted wondering what movie to watch when she gets home, until two guys appear behind her, putting a sack on her head and quickly carrying her, placing her in a car. Yaom wonders if she's being kidnapped now and if this is serious. Elsewhere, they take her to this location, and Janam says that no matter how powerful Do is, he never saw this coming and thinks that S-rank are beings with power beyond human limits, and only some squad captains from the Guardian Gate could wipe out the guild. And if the rumors about him taking care of the grandson are true, then even Do is just a man like them. With his blood relative held hostage, he won't be able to unleash all his strength, and now they just need to tighten the noose. And if they use this opportunity to manipulate the Shadow Guard portal, the Scorpion Guild will become the strongest in South Korea. Anne says he's never heard that he had a granddaughter. Joe takes off the cloth from her head and watches her. He freezes and covers her head again, asking if it's the Crimson Flame. Hong starts burning the cloth on her head and burns the rope tying her arms. Jinim falls to the ground, scared. Yom asks if he has business with their guild leader and says it's her first time being kidnapped and hopes to make it more fun. Elsewhere, the Harmonia Guild says the day has finally arrived. The redhead tells the rookie to stay alert and he'll show who the true ace of this guild is today. The protagonist thinks he says things like this casually, as if he were the main character of a comic book. The hunters say it's getting stranger every day until someone calls for the master. And it's the Emperor saying to accept them because he knew coming here was the right choice. Man says they should be the ones to thank, as today's gate raid is only happening because of the invasion license he got last time. The hunter says they have pride and then tries to protect a portal alone, but the Scorpion Guild got caught up in all the attacks they launched. Yon asks if he said Scorpion. The hunter asks why he knows about them, and the protagonist responds that he doesn't. The two hunters look at each other, startled. Choi tells them to go and calls the rookie to come with them. The Emperor takes off his glasses and sighs, asking if this is how they want to play, until he looks at his phone and doesn't understand much when seeing a picture and people commenting and wanting to know what happened. A saved contact named Gorilla says it's the guy who kidnapped him and is the Scorpion Guildmaster. Jan looks at it and smiles, writing that he needs a favor and will give him a note. Elsewhere, someone runs and opens a door. The guild members are badly injured. One of the members asks what happened and says they got nervous because of a single girl, claiming she's only rank S by name. And up close, she's just a pretty-faced girl. Ju tells them to shut up and asks if they don't know who Crimson Flame is. He says wherever she appears, everything turns to ashes, and each portal she invades burns so hot that even the entrance radiates heat. She's a rare mage among hunters, and she's not just anyone. He asks if they think a pretty face is what gets her ranked S, and tells them to be grateful that this is all that happened. Jinim wonders how things got so messy, as he only wanted to bring down that little assistant, and he could back down now, but one day he will pay back that debt to the assistant. Then he hears someone saying to stop for a second. Hong approaches them again. Joe, startled, says they could go. She responds that she changed her mind. Yeom snaps her fingers and flames start to emit around the place. She says her brother asked for a favor for the first time and she got curious and asked what was going on. And it turns out they messed with him. And they really did this to themselves because messing with this guy is a job. Hong attacks with her enormous flame and they scream desperately as the fire grows more intense around the place. She smiles, saying it felt like she was the main character in a comic book right now. After some time, the Scorpion Guild members are in the hospital, and as a result of this incident, the guild was destroyed. South Korea was in an uproar over the unprecedented accident, which was later called a classification kidnapping. Elsewhere, people comment on the incident. The editor's looking at his phone and notices that Tae sent a message that he would secure the manuscript by the next day. Meanwhile, at the center of the accident, the protagonist has just sent the message, saying he needs to write something, and someone is behind, asking who they are to ask directly. The Emperor turns around and asks if she really wants to know. His sister tilts her head and says yes. Yeon tells her to use the magic words and she walks outside. Tae says he couldn't write because of those guys from the Scorpion Guild and the manuscript was delayed. And this time, he almost didn't make it because of that gorilla. Hong gets angry and chokes him, asking what he thinks about being eliminated by the gorilla. The protagonist says that's not necessary and says their guild is being harassed. He crouches on the ground and says he almost got eliminated before the serialization. Yeom asks about his guild and Yeon says he doesn't want to make a fuss, so they'll keep it a secret for now. His sister runs out, calling for their parents and telling them about the event. They respond for the two of them to stay quiet and eat. Elsewhere, someone places a few things on the table and says their parents told them to tell them and thanks for accepting them into the guild. The hunter responds that it wasn't necessary. The voice says Big is sleeping and Yong said he'd be late because he had something to do. The hunter asks if he's heard about the scorpion incident, and the protagonist responds that he has. The hunter finds it amusing and says it's a shame they tried to intercept the attack. Tae thinks it's actually his fault. The hunter says he thought better about it, and even though the rankings are different, they're all entangled. And Scorpion was one of the most successful rank A guilds, and suddenly they took away their right to bid for attacks and even committed the unprecedented act of kidnapping a ranked individual. He stands up, and the protagonist wonders if he realizes that he himself is the cause, and if he'll be asked to leave because he's a bother to the guild. The hunter says there's only one conclusion. He faces the rookie. The Emperor begins to tremble and says he will make sure this never happens again. The hunter says they're about to get rich and asks why high-ranking hunters would start a war. He says it's because right inside the gate there's bidding going on and there's a great treasure. And since the Scorpion Guild no longer exists, even their attack rights were intercepted. Now they're free. Now all that's left is to get rich, until someone hits him and asks if he's been lucky lately and now wants to get rich and what kind of treasure. The hunter, with a bleeding nose, replies that this is a special offer week. Man says there are some mercenary jobs after this. The hunter says that if they get treasures, they can say goodbye to this tedious mercenary work. Yeon says he thought it was over, until he notices a message on his phone and it's the editor saying he'd like to have a meeting about the manuscript sent this morning. The Emperor thinks this is 100% his opinion. Meanwhile, at the cafe, Tae arrives at the location and Gu says he enjoyed reading the manuscript and it's much better since the talk about the contract termination. But it's not without disadvantages. The editor watches him and asks when the main character will become a rank B hunter and mentions that same part. Nowadays, the writing has become more realistic and interesting, but it's full of very routine things because there's no event that brings growth to the main character, and his work isn't progressing. He explains that usually the main character starts normal, and it's through many trials, tribulations, and training that they become stronger. Readers read the story of growth and feel the catharsis along with great satisfaction. The protagonist asks about the growth story and the editor responds yes and explains that even the 12 apostles weren't strong from the start, and through difficulties and battles they became stronger and are now the heroes of today. And because of that progress, people got excited about them. And he heard that the Emperor was born with great power, and one thing is certain, it's time for the main character to grow too. Yeon says that in the next chapter he needs to include a scene where the main character overcomes a trial and becomes stronger. The editor agrees and looks at the watch on his wrist, saying he has a meeting soon and should leave first. Tae thanks him for the feedback. Gu says before he leaves he wants to say one thing and asks what the growth of the writer is. And he says he hopes he thinks carefully about it, because the main character of the writer starts from there. The editor leaves, and the protagonist says that the main character is growing, and asks what that thing called growth really is. Elsewhere, the Emperor is in front of the computer, looking up research on the main character's growth, and asks if he should make them stronger by training. And if that's not enough, he also asks about inner growth. He looks it up, and the result says it involves overcoming trauma or resolving internal conflicts, and starts giving several examples on the subject. Tay still can't understand what it means, as he has no idea what he's talking about. He smiles and says that still, if it's about observing the growth of a companion, that can be done. Elsewhere, the Harmonia Guild is fighting and keeping a straight line formation. The monster runs toward them, slamming on the ground and observing. One of them blocks, saying they usually use too much strength and calls for the other two members. They attack the beast, cutting it. The Emperor watches and realizes there's nothing to have in mind. He remembers a week ago, 2 weeks, and 3 weeks ago, and thinks it's the same tactical battle as always, and there's nothing to grow, learn, or consult with anyone. And he remembers the editor tearing up the paper and saying it's really a contract termination. The guild manages to eliminate the beast. The master says they did a good job and asks what a prepared rookie is. Meanwhile, Yan is at the back, crouching, saying this can't be happening. And Man asks what's wrong with this guy and says they should go home now until Choi calls and asks if he forgot something. The master says the profit distribution will be settled this week. Yong says that's also important, but they need to celebrate the return and the rookie enlistment party since it's been almost 2 weeks. Man, a bit down, says it's the rookie enlistment party, but there's something to take care of today and they can do it next time. They fall silent and Choi asks if something's wrong. Seung responds that it's not. Meanwhile, at the bus stop, the Harmonia Guildmaster is inside the bus smiling until he reaches a location. The attendant greets him and he gets off with a bag and flowers, smiling. Man approaches the hospital and encounters 2 people. They notice him. The child is happy to see him. The master enters and asks how he is. His son replies that he didn't leave any of his food today. Man says he deserves a reward and hands him a book. The child takes it and is surprised. The master asks if this is what he wanted, and the child replies that yes, thanking him and saying he has the best father. Man looks at the woman next to him and gives her flowers. Mel gets very excited and the master says it's their anniversary today and both forgot about it. The master looks at her and kisses her, until his son calls him. When Man looks, he sees blood coming out of his nose. The child gets scared. The parents look shocked, and the boy starts losing consciousness. The doctors put respiratory devices to help the child. His mother cries at the edge of the bed while the doctor explains to the father that the medication is working well and there's nothing to worry about. He explains that his son's rare disease is related to the gate, and the condition worsens the more he's exposed to magic. He understands that it's a difficult situation but believes they should schedule the surgery as soon as possible. Man starts trembling and replies that he understands. The doctor says they will take steps to schedule the surgery for any available time and will notify them of the decision. The master replies that he understands, enters the room again, worried, wondering how to make another loan. He thinks that if he can't do it, he'll try to accept more mercenary jobs and get the money somehow. He goes to his wife's side and wipes her tears, telling her he'll find a way, and the surgery cost will be covered soon. Then the parents look shocked when they hear the boy. Jiho calls for them. Man asks if he's feeling a little better now and says he must have been scared since the doctor just helped him overcome the pain. The child apologizes and says he shouldn't be sick. His father asks why he's saying that. The boy says that if he weren't sick, his parents wouldn't have to suffer so much. He keeps apologizing. Mel says he has nothing to apologize for because the guilty ones are them. The master says he will make sure he won't have to feel pain anymore and promises to help him. Elsewhere, Man walks disheartened, remembering when he went to the bank and was told that he already had loans in his name. He was told it was impossible to make more loans and realized he had no choice. And in the present time, he thinks he'll work as a mercenary now. He sits down and a young man approaches, wishing him a good job and asking how he's working so much there, and if he needs instant money these days. The guildmaster replies that he does. The young man says he's serious and doesn't mind, until he's surprised and asks if it's 200 million. He says rank C hunters don't earn that much. The young man stays quiet for a moment and says to wait a minute. He talks on the phone with someone, asking if it's possible for rank C hunters too. He hangs up the phone and Man asks if it's a well-paid job. The young man replies that it's somewhat. The master asks about the type of job, saying he has no problem doing any kind of work. The mercenary says that the rank B guild, consisting only of mages, is looking for a ranker to endure all the damage while they work on their magic, but the place is very dangerous for a rank C hunter to go. If the raid is successful, the profit will exceed 500 million, and since there will be a tanker, they can take about 100 million. The master asks if they will really give that amount. The mercenary says he understands his situation but needs to think about it carefully, as he'll have to face the monsters alone. It's a high-level gate where he could lose his life. Man says just help him get the job, as he really needs to do this. Elsewhere, the master fights against a giant monster. They exchange blows while fighting, and Man says kitchen. It crosses his mind when he asked why the rent suddenly increased. The person replies that the prices of things went up, and he can't be thinking about the circumstances forever. If he can't pay by next month, he'll have to leave. In real time, the fight continues. While continuing to cross the master's mind, another person says that the rent for the guild office will also increase. In real time, Man kneels on the ground, still thinking that his son needs the surgery as soon as possible. He blocks the attack and says that no matter how many difficulties life imposes, he asks if they think he will collapse easily. The master continues blocking and says he is the head of a house. The beast prepares its weapon and attacks again, breaking the sword he was blocking with. The mages quickly approach, saying to invest all the mana into it. Man, badly injured and lying on the ground, tears flowing from his face, says he's sorry for being an incompetent father. Elsewhere, the protagonist is tired and talking about growth, saying it seems his growth talisman is about to collapse until his phone starts ringing. When he answers, he says he was about to leave for work, but looks surprised when he hears something. Meanwhile, in the hospital, the Harmonia Guildmaster is hospitalized and his wife is crying at the edge of the bed. Tay arrives at the door with the hunter and says the master was overwhelmed with work to pay for his son's surgery. Seong confirms and says he should have informed them. The emperor stays quiet and then says he would also like to help, asking how much it would take to support him. Ho gets excited to hear this, but then notices something. He looks down and says that even though he appreciates it, he'll have to refuse, because if he truly needed the money, he would have asked for help. He thought maybe Big's situation would improve and tried to convince the guild to accept him as emperor, but they saw him as a younger brother. Choi says they contacted the guild where their master worked as a mercenary. Seong replies that he's going there and says he's really honest or very naive. If they take the boy's help, he feels he'd disappoint him. The protagonist watches him leave and says he understands and that instead of emperor, maybe he can help as a younger brother. Elsewhere, mages are saying the monsters are approaching and that everyone should prepare. They observe the skeletons with armor and ask about the rank C ones, calling them to withstand the strike. People run. The Harmonia Guild members hold their weapons, facing the skeletons, and begin fighting. The mages call them fools and say they're being pushed back. Seong replies that he understands. The mages say that now it's the boss's room, but they'll take a short break and should regroup and prepare for the fight. The Harmonia Guild sits on the ground exhausted. Ho thinks this is a rank B gate and they only dealt with small mobs, but they're already at their limit and their master was dealing with these things alone, until he hears someone saying they just hired a rank B. The mages comment that they're not capable of resisting normal monsters, so it's hard to face the boss. One mage says they heard it cost 300 million to hire B-class mercenaries, and last time they did well with a rank C mercenary. And this time there are two, and they can't be knocked out. The mages say it's still hard. Seong listens and thinks they're right, wondering if they can really resist and if the two get hurt. Until the protagonist approaches, very exhausted. Ho asks what he thinks he's doing. Tae starts laughing and says they're facing the boss today, and asks if he can trust him and follow his leadership. Meanwhile, the mages fight the skeletons and find it strange that the little one is appearing instead of the boss. One of them thinks it's better to stop the raid for today since there are too many, and they've almost used all their magical power, and they don't know why the boss isn't appearing, and they nearly eliminated everyone. When their power recovers, they can come back to search because, in their current state, they can't win even if they keep fighting. The leader thinks he has enough magical power for 1 or 2 spells at most, and to cause damage to the boss with that, he'd have to be in a twisted state. And there's no way those rank C guys did that. He sighs and says to finish the raid today, but they'll come back to get the boss next time. They walk out and the Emperor says it's just the beginning. The leader doesn't understand much. A skeleton head starts to float, emitting enormous mana, flying pieces of skeletons around the place, gathering all the pieces and transforming into the boss monster. Everyone watches, and the leader complains that it appeared now. The mages start attacking with fire arrows, electric shocks, and ice spears, causing big impacts. However, the boss remains intact, ready to attack. They look shocked. Yeon gets excited and says, "Now is the time." The other guild members look and quickly approach the monster. The mages are wide-eyed as they see them attacking the beast and ask if 2 rank C hunters are crushing the boss, not understanding what's happening. Tae apologizes as the 2 hunters continue fighting the enemy. Seong thinks this is what the youngest said and remembers him explaining that it's a strategy he developed using materials shared by the association. And this is his first time creating strategies below rank A, so he did some research. And this boss is the giant skeleton, so large that each attack has immense power, but it's slow, and its weak points are the joints of its bones. One weakness is strength, and the other is speed, so they should be able to attack before being attacked. Ho asks if all of this was researched in just one night. The protagonist responds that he's also a bit of a writer. Although he's an aspiring writer, research is basic. In real time, Seong silently thanks. The boss starts emitting a loud sound, and since it usually roars before attacking, they need to focus on attacking to the left or right while dodging in a way that could distract its attention. Afterward, they need to aim for the joints as much as possible. Choi jumps onto its back and loud noises are heard. Tae shouts to the hunter that now is the time. Ho jumps and says they attack the center of the enemy with maximum power and finished off the opponent. He aims at the center and attacks, causing a huge impact, and continues attacking until he's thrown far away, not understanding what happened. The Emperor asks if the enemy recovered and thinks he understands. He observes and continues thinking that the strategy is just a method, because without basic strength, they can't bring it down. The mages become desperate and very scared. Yan thinks he believes there's no choice but to intervene. Ho continues fighting the monster and calls for his partner. The protagonist just watches. Seong asks if they remember the tactics they always use and tells them to try modifying them a bit and go. Tae wonders about the tactic and if it could be the same one they use every day. Ho says that even though their master isn't there, they'll combine their strengths and do it for him. Choi agrees and tries to catch the beast's attention, flipping it off and insulting it. The boss looks back and runs toward him. Seong uses chains to pull the beast's leg. The monster loses its balance. Yang asks if this is the final strike. Ho replies that yes, and if it were their brother, he would have destroyed the core with just one hit, but they'll try to do it at the same time. Choi gets into attack position, aiming at the center, and the two strike together in the same spot. The monster roars and an explosion occurs. The boss begins to disappear from the area. The mages watch and realize this and begin to celebrate. The protagonist thinks that this was incredible because, in addition to their strategy, they didn't give up even in a life or death moment. They created a new strategy with their own strength, and that is growth. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Man is still lying down, apologizing and saying it's because he couldn't do his best, until he opens his eyes, disoriented, not knowing where he is. He remembers he was trying to raise money for his son's surgery but ended up failing and doesn't know what to do now. Then the curtain opens and his work partners approach. Seong asks what kind of state the guildmaster is in and if he knows how shocked they were. Man apologizes, and they say that while he was resting, he did what he could, and now he doesn't need to worry about the surgery costs anymore. The master asks if it's the money they earned from the mercenary work. They smile, and Ho replies that yes, they just earned this money, and it's enough to cover the surgery costs for his son. Man replies that he doesn't think he can accept this. They look surprised, and Seong asks if he's thinking about his son. He replies that he won't accept this because they risked their lives to earn it. Choi says to just take it, as everyone there knows his situation. The master says that's the problem, that it all happened because of him. He remembers when the guild members were gathered and were very tired. They replied that it was understandable since they had been through many gates in one day. Man replies that his son is sick. One of them says to forget Ji-ho and they'll go to the Wild Bear guild leader. Bear asks how long they'll keep cleaning up the guildmaster's mess, because with things like this, the guild will never reach rank B. They're all working hard to keep up with him and getting hurt, ending up in the hospital. That's why he's planning to start his own guild. At that moment, Man was listening to everything and says it's all his fault, the dreams and families he can't protect. In real time, the master says it's all because he forced this burden on him, so he'll have to figure things out on his own the next day. Seong replies that it was all because of Richard. Tae sighs and says he will keep helping. Man doesn't quite understand. The Emperor says he received feedback saying that the character in his novel isn't growing. At first he was a bit confused because, from his perspective, the character was steadily rising in rank, learning new skills and getting stronger. But he realized from all of them that growth isn't just that. He wasn't just entering gates to rise in rank, but to protect something precious. And all of them entered the gate to help the guildmaster. And because of that determination, he showed a courage that overcame power. And since the moment he joined this guild, he had already decided that the theme of his story would be family first. And he asks, if not here, where else could he have experienced this kind of growth? So, he will keep helping for the growth of his character and for their guild. Man thinks he understands that it's not just about himself, because they help each other, each for the good of the others. And he was afraid of getting hurt like a fool and only thought of himself. He stays quiet for a moment and says that from now on, he asks if he can also be a little selfish. Seong says he can be as much as he wants. Yeon says that then it means he'll help as much as he wants. They start laughing. Elsewhere, explosions are happening and robots are fighting beasts. Do says to keep holding the formation and push them back. They reply that they understand and continue exchanging blows. The Emperor of Swords watches. The beast begins to breathe fire. The warrior says it's not a chance and blocks with his shield. Smoke moves and Young asks if everything's okay. The old man replies that yes, and wonders if, even with the first and second elite squads, they're still being pushed back. He thinks a monster is still a monster and says to take care of the guild members. Hayo replies not to worry. Do holds his weapon and says that this time he might have to risk his life. He watches the beast. Loud noises are heard. The Emperor of Swords looks at the sky where a great mana is coming from, and a thunderstorm is emitted. extremely intense on the beast. Winds grow strong, and the old man says that living long enough has its advantages, and never thought he'd see the Thunder Emperor like this, and asks if he came to save them. The protagonist replies that he didn't, and that he came because he has a favor to ask. Do asks if he can't just say he did. At the international airport, there are several people with cameras, and someone approaches with a suitcase. He takes off his glasses and says, "It's been a while," and he's one of the 12 legendary apostles, the martial god Sato Kazuya. The president says he came suddenly and is quite surprised by this. The martial god apologizes and places the cup on the table, handing over a paper. Park wonders how serious the matter is for the president of the Japanese Association to send an apostle, until he looks at the paper and is surprised, asking if they are eliminated. Sato replies that yes, and 2 members of the 13 stars of the blue sky were removed. The president says that's impossible and thinks the 13 stars of the blue sky are the 13 highest-ranked hunters in the world, second only to the 12 apostles and closest to the legendary level. They are undeniably some of the strongest. He asks who in the world could have eliminated the 2. Kazuya replies that it was Black Spear, and the president of the association is well aware, not only in social and economic aspects, but even fueling international conflicts and the recent global incidents. Everyone knows who's behind them. Park agrees that it was their doing and asserts that only the awakened are the true new humanity, and the non-awakened exist only to be governed. The group responsible for the massacres is closely monitoring the dangerous ideology. The martial god says they were just keeping an eye on them, but with the incident, they realized they are much more than just a terrorist group. The Japanese president asked to deliver this message, and in light of these events, he hopes he won't hesitate to unite the forces of nations. They shake hands. The president says to join with pleasure and strength. Sato says for more details about the incident and the alliance, they can review the document. The Japanese president is being very cautious, as he could go in and eliminate them himself, but for some reason, he's quite concerned. He asks if he doesn't agree. Park thinks that only 12 people in the world could say something like this so casually, and Kazuya thinks it's time to meet this guy. Elsewhere, Man's family and his guild partners are sitting, eating. Choi stands up and says they will celebrate his return after finishing his training and the official induction of the rookie into the guild. Also a toast to the master's family, safety, and well-being, and may the party begin? Everyone toasts. Yang eats and, with his mouth full, says everything is very good. The child says he wants to try it too. Choi keeps eating eagerly. Seung gets annoyed and tells him to eat in moderation. He hits him, and they start to argue. The protagonist continues eating. Man's family starts laughing until a voice says they've eaten enough. Yang, with his huge stomach from eating, says they still need to eat ice cream and dessert after the meal is mandatory. Mel says she will give the child some medicine. The master and Tae gather the trash. Man says yesterday was shocking and remembers Do, saying he never would have imagined he was his grandfather. The emperor replies that they aren't blood relatives, and that's just something they say. The master says he was also shocked for another reason, as the old man suddenly appeared, and both were transferred to a VIP ward. He covered all the remaining medical expenses, reimbursing everything they had paid so far, and similarly he offered to give them a house. He was told that the best way to repay it was to help Gawa grow, and as soon as his son's surgery is over, they will begin guild recruitment. Yan says he'll also do his best and thinks that by recruiting new members, he would wonder what kind of episode will happen this time. While cleaning, he notices Mana surrounding him and says he just needs to go to a place for a while and will return soon. The protagonist heads to a forest, looks around, and thinks about this energy until he notices something. He looks to the side and attacks with strikes and observes. Someone passes by him very quickly, causing large impacts. He blocks a punch and asks what they think they're doing. Someone says his skills are still sharp as they thought he'd be rusty. It's the martial god who asks if he's been doing well. They sit down. Sato asks if he said he returned to research a more realistic novel and as an excuse to write better, and Tae replies yes, wondering how many times he needs to explain this. Kazuya says that a hero disappears from humanity and suddenly returns, of course. People were curious, and he was surprised because he thought he would return immediately. The emperor says a lot has happened and it's fun, and now he wants to write even better. The martial god looks at him and thinks it seems something has changed. He stands up and says to continue writing and not give up. Yan asks if he's already leaving. Sato replies that he had other business to take care of, so he gave an opportunity. And while he remains as the Thunder Emperor, they will meet again soon. The protagonist doesn't understand much. Elsewhere, Park says that, after thinking about it, 2 of the 13 stars were eliminated. And now, the only ones who can face Black Spear are the 12 apostles. He remembers when he spoke to Tae, he seemed very disinterested in the subject and wonders if the Thunder Emperor really intervened. He thinks the worst-case scenario is him. And it crosses his mind, him saying that he finished the research and is planning to retire again. and gets very irritated thinking about it and starts yelling. Meanwhile, the secretary is at the door wanting to enter. He enters, and the president immediately says that it was just vocal practice and asks about the report. The secretary replies that hunters have just announced the ranking of the most promising rookies, and a hunter from their country took first place. Park asks if it's about the demon sword, and he replies yes, asking if he already knew. The president replies yes, and says that of all the rookies he knows, he's also the best. The demon sword, Seong-woo, the most talked about hunter in Korea recently, a genius who reached rank S in the shortest time after awakening. One of the 7 mythical level weapons, known as the strongest weapon since the era of the Great Gate. The contractor of the Black Moon, Park gets very excited that Korea will have 2 legendary hunters, and says this means Korea will be first in the world and he will be the #1 president of the association. And they won't have to depend solely on the Thunder Emperor anymore, and he's done dealing with him, who keeps randomly saying he's going to retire until the protagonist appears inside the room. The president immediately falls silent. Tae says to keep talking because he's curious. Park says that's not what he meant. Meanwhile, outside, someone is thinking that when he reached rank S, there were all sorts of records to manage, and he had to go through the association at least once. The sword says that to become a warrior worthy of him, he needs to become even stronger than now. The day he can fully use his power, and no one will be able to defeat him. The demon sword observes as the president walks out, wanting to redeem himself with yawn. Seong turns his back. The sword is confused when seeing someone like that. Woo wonders what's wrong. The sword speaks about the man who just passed by. Seong turns to look, and the sword says it's an absolute monster, one that should never be fought. Woo asks again if it's this guy, and thinks he can't feel anything from him, but the Dark Moon never said that before. And if this is really a monster, the sword is surprised, and Seong thinks he must be useful for growth. The sword tells him to wait, as it doesn't seem like a good idea. He approaches the protagonist, points the weapon toward him, and challenges him to a fight. Tae glares at him, lowers his weapon, and responds, no. Woo wonders if he just ignored him, as if he were nothing, and thinks that normally just touching his sword would leave someone unconscious. And this guy is really different. He says it's rude, but he'll insist. The emperor asks who he is to suddenly appear and demand a fight. Seong thinks he won't even bother with the weak and says it was very hasty. He then introduces himself. Yeon says he doesn't care as he's very busy right now. Park looks closely and realizes that he really is the demon's sword, but doesn't understand why he's challenging the Thunder Emperor. The demonic sword thinks that for a hunter to move to the next stage, they need a turning point, which is different for each person, but generally fighting a stronger opponent triggers it. However, a single match wouldn't be enough, but if it's him, even a brief experience can lead to massive growth. When the protagonist is about to leave, the president tells him to wait and mentions the pending request for the month. Tae doesn't care much about it. Park says that's why he came to the association today, but they tried to stop him by criticizing his past actions and making a fool of themselves, and now he'll make a simple request. He would like to fight that guy over there. In another location, the president says that this is the best sparring facility the association has to offer, and to prevent shockwaves from escaping, the entire area is surrounded by dozens of barriers, and even if someone stronger appears, it will never break, so he can fight with full strength. Seong thought this guy looked familiar, and it turns out he really is. And yet he's still trying to please that boy and wonders what's wrong with him. Park tells them to take positions and begin. Woo thinks he will find out soon. The president says to get ready and start. The demonic sword attacks quickly and thinks it's strange that it didn't hit him. It tries to attack again, but the emperor dodges with no difficulty. Still, Seong keeps trying to attack, surprised that he dodges so easily, and thinks he will have to push harder with dark. The sword says it warned him he was a monster and activates synchronization, increasing it to 34%, then to 47%. Yeon says he's getting faster than before. Synchronization continues to rise and Woo attacks, creating a massive impact. The president says this mana is beyond his expectations, and this really is a demonic sword. Seong says this time will be different. Park says that sometimes even the emperor can't stay calm. Woo attacks and grabs a bit of the opponent's hair, with the protagonist dodging, saying his attacks are getting heavier. Seong continues moving quickly and attacking in various ways, but Tae keeps dodging all of them. Woo can't believe he can't land a hit and can't reach him, until he stops trying to hit and thinks the difference between them is truly vast. The emperor calmly asks if he will give up. The demon sword tells the Black Moon to increase synchronization. It asks if he knows his limit. Seong replies that he knows and that now it's time to surpass his limit. The Black Moon says it understands and reminds him that if he loses consciousness during the process, his soul will be consumed by its power. Then, synchronization is increased. Woo looks with terrifying eyes, strikes his sword on the ground, and the mana becomes terrifying. The president watching thinks it's amazing. The demonic sword says this time, He won't be able to dodge. The mana grows more intense. He raises the sword and attacks. The protagonist watches and thinks it's not bad, deciding it's better to show a little too. Seong notices lightning. Tae starts emitting lightning, passing through his finger and intensifying, attacking his opponent, causing a massive explosion. Park is impressed and notices that the entire defense barrier has been pierced, causing destruction around the area. Woo looks, gets up, and starts laughing, saying he never imagined he was the Emperor of Thunder. Elsewhere, he wants to be accepted as a disciple, and Yon, fiddling with his notebook, replies that he doesn't. The demonic sword watches him and begs to be accepted, saying he has a reason to become stronger, and begins telling his story. When he was young, his family was poor, but they were happy living with his younger brother. One day, his brother showed exceptional potential as a hunter and was almost kidnapped by an evil organization. At that moment, with the embarrassing cliché, Dark Moon appeared and made a contract with him. After much fighting, he barely managed to rescue him. Since that incident, his brother has been lying in bed as if his soul had been drained. The protagonist asks if he decided to crush that organization for revenge and find a way to save his brother, and that's why he needs to get stronger. Seong is shocked and asks how he knows this. Tae says to try hearing the same story for a week straight and see if you don't memorize it. He says he's heard him say the same thing for a week too, and he's already strong enough. He adds that if he gains experience for a few more years, he will become even stronger. Wu bangs on the table and says that's too long, and although he reached rank S within 2 years of awakening to reach a higher realm, he realized he needs to learn from someone even stronger. During their duel, he understood there's no one in the world stronger than him, and only he can teach him. His brother is in the hospital. The Emperor says his circumstances are truly unfortunate, but he's very busy with his work and doesn't have time to mentor him. The demonic sword asks what he means by job. Yon replies that being a hunter is just a side profession, and that his real job is writing web novels. Seong is surprised. He goes outside the cafe and thinks he doesn't understand how with all that power and fame, this guy chose to write and is desperate. The Black Moon says it understands and that it must feel like he's running this race alone, that so far to reach his goal there's been no one to run alongside him. And running this kind of race alone, one day, he looks around and realizes there's no one by his side, and that must be lonely and empty. There were some like that among his previous masters, those who were very exceptional and lost their purpose in life. The protagonist stops and asks if he's planning to follow him all the way home, saying he's arrived, and that the convenience store is his home. Seong replies that he won't and that he wouldn't be so shameless, and that he's very hungry. Tae asks if he wants to eat before leaving. After a while inside the house, a feast is laid out on the table. The Emperor's family is sitting down eating, and he, while eating, talks with his brother. His mother hears him call his sister a gorilla and tells him to stop. His father laughs, and when he goes to eat, he notices something, and Yon is shouting. Woo, sitting, thinks he really followed him all the way home. The father tells the boy to eat and not feel uncomfortable and asks if the two of them are close, as it's the first time his son has brought a friend there. The protagonist replies that they just met by chance. The younger brother says that his brother is the only one who would introduce the magic sword like that. His father asks if he knows him, and he replies that yes, and that he's quite famous. The mother places an egg on the demonic sword's plate and says he can come anytime he's hungry. Seong replies that he understands and thanks her for the meal. Tae asks about his egg, and she responds that he needs to act nice first. Seong observes and remembers his own family, thinking it's been a while since he had homemade food and says it's delicious, continuing to eat. Everyone at the table looks. Woo is confused and apologizes, while the two brothers complain that it's quite spicy. Their father also complains, and the mother says she must have gotten the seasoning wrong and will bring some water. The demonic sword smiles awkwardly. After a while, he goes outside, thanks them for today, and says it's been a long time since he felt such family warmth. Seong looks and thinks there were those who lost their purpose in life because they were too exceptional, and says he was very focused on himself and is now leaving. The protagonist observes and tells him not to forget that he already has enough problems to worry about and calls after him. The Black Moon asks if he's giving up on becoming a disciple. Seong thinks he doesn't want to bother him anymore. Tae says they're recruiting guild members and invites him to go there. Woo thinks he really did say he was part of a guild and says it's still too early to give up. He notices the protagonist is talking on the phone. At the guild interview, a guy enters and the master tells him to introduce himself. He introduces himself as Flash Hoon. Seong says he likes his confidence. The master looks at the data and says he's been rejected. Then, a boy shows his arm with dark flames and says that if he releases the seal, even the crimson flame wouldn't be the same. The interviewers warn him that his head is on fire and he is also rejected. Another person enters saying that even if he's awakened, if accepted, he could become a rank S hero. After some time, still at the same location, several more candidates are rejected. They comment that even though it's only the first day of recruitment, there isn't a single decent candidate. They stand by the couch and Man asks about the rookie. The vice says he must have stayed up all night writing again and thinks it's better to move on and continue the interviews until he looks at the paper and becomes interested in the next candidate's resume. The master looks surprised. Then the next candidate enters and they look attentively. The guy is big and muscular, carrying a hammer, and introduces himself as Nam Dupal. He smiles, and the interviewers whisper among themselves. Nominal value. The ranking of a guild is determined based on the member with the highest rank within it. And to increase the ranking, guilds pay high-ranking hunters to join. In a common gap, Nam says, opportunities like this don't appear often. The master says they will finish this, and he is rejected. Du, angry, looks at them. Man smiles and gestures toward the exit door. Nam slams his hammer on the table and asks how they dare be so rude. Yang is startled. The master says since the applicant has difficulty understanding, he will explain. He glares at the boy and says the guild has no place for people like him, so he can leave. Du raises his hammer to attack, but someone stops him. Nam turns around and sees Wu, who says that since he was rejected, he can go home. A voice asks if it's the magic sword, and the two interviewers are surprised to see. Seong takes off his hood, sits on the couch, and says he came to apply. Later, still in the same place, Man summarizes his story about saving his brother and asks if he decided to join this guild now. The demonic sword replies that yes, and that he has a desire for the end. Choi insults him. Someone enters through the door and says they don't have much time because his younger brother is still in the hospital. Seong whispers to his partner about his entry and says that getting involved with such a character means they won't only deal with gate issues but all kinds of chaos. Wu pleads that he needs to get stronger no matter what. The master stares at him and remembers when he also begged to do so and fought a much stronger monster to save his son. In the present time, he thinks he can't let the young ones go through such reckless things like he did and says the boy is in. The vice asks if he's crazy. Man asks why he's acting this way since he was also convinced to let the rookie in. Seung says it was because of his situation. The master says that's enough, gets up and welcomes him to the team. Seong shakes his hand and thanks him for accepting him. Man says he also has a sick son and understands how desperate he is, and if there's anything he can do to help, he should just ask. Suddenly, the protagonist arrives, saying he's late and asks if he missed everything. The master says he now has a junior. Tae asks if it's a new younger one, and is curious to know who it is. The demonic sword introduces himself and says he's looking forward to working with him. The emperor asks what he's doing there. That day, the guild's ranking was officially updated to rank S, while the guild was in chaos. Seong thinks that an elite team under the Thunder Emperor has been formed, and there's so much to learn ahead. In another location, Man has a sword in his hand and says now is their chance to attack. Choi agrees. The vice attacks. Yang does too, and the master attacks last, but they realize they've lost him. The rabbit runs toward the demonic sword, looking at him. Seong watches them running after the rabbit and wonders if this is supposed to be a fight. He thinks he heard they took a rank B boss, but this is completely subpar and doesn't understand why the emperor is in this kind of guild. He remembers when he was with him and said he could have done the research anywhere, and asks why he chose the rank C guild. Tae replies that it's the only one that works for him. Wu finds this explanation vague. The protagonist asks if he thinks all writers are good at explaining things. Suddenly, his phone vibrates. He picks it up and notices it's a message saying that the SSS ranking has appeared only in Brazil and this is an emergency. Jan gets up and says if he's curious about why he's there, he can find out on his own, and while he's at it, he can help with the guild's work research. In another location, pieces of a sword fly, and it's Choi's. He realizes it and calls for his mother, then screams Maria. The demonic sword watches and thinks he expected more, and since he was asked to take care of this guild, he wonders if they have time after this, and how they'll proceed with an update. In another place, with a statue standing in the middle, the Harmonia Guild approaches. Choi says this is the legendary hunter from the store department, and they tell everyone to look at the statue, which is the Thunder Emperor, and that his dream is to meet him at least once. Wu asks if this guy doesn't know. Man replies that he's always slow to accept things and thanks him, saying he never thought they'd receive an update bonus, and above that, 10 billion. Seong replies that he doesn't need to thank him, and should just consider the cost of letting him in. He thinks he doesn't care why the Thunder Emperor is in this guild, but that he could be by his side. He smiles. Yang is looking for a sword, and Seong picks up a sword and says maybe he should change his style. The master is also looking for a weapon, and they say they've chosen. The demonic sword says to put everything back and thinks of a way to start explaining this. He tells the redhead to use good sense and that there's no need for an ego sword to be sold in a department store, and tells Ho that his strength lies in speed, and the weapon would completely eliminate the advantage. He asks the master if he plans to become a lumberjack, They respond that it's good enough for them. Wu says that with this mindset, they won't make it past rank C. The Vice says he doesn't know about those two, but he actually thought of this because when they took the rank B gate, they almost got eliminated because they lacked a solid final move, so he chose this to cover their weakness. Seong says that now that he mentioned it, he asks how he managed to do that and says that their skills should have made the boss impossible. Choi replies that they are stronger than they seem. Ho says he understands because it's hard to believe they took down a rank B, and if it weren't for the Emperor, it wouldn't have been possible. The demonic sword thinks he had a feeling, and that the Emperor did all the work, and they only acted as if they did it alone. He stands still thinking that he doesn't understand the Emperor, wondering why he's wasting time with people like this, and says he will choose weapons that fit them. They're confused, thinking they did something wrong. Meanwhile, someone walks by listening to music, and it's Bear. He watches the guild talking, smiles, and asks how a bunch of beggars can pay. Man, irritated, says they should leave as he doesn't want a war. Choi says this place isn't suited for trash like him. The two stare at each other. Richard puts his hand on his shoulder and asks why he doesn't greet him first. Yang replies that at least he has good manners and used to think he was the coolest guy, and asks what's going on now, saying it's about the gate changes, incidents where he threw his own guildmates under the bus and ran to save himself and the people who trusted him, asking if he still calls himself a leader. Bear gets angry and approaches to attack him, but someone puts their hand in front, stopping the attack, and it's Man, saying it's one of his biggest regrets in life. The master attacks him and knocks him to the ground, staring at him. Richard, lying on the ground, asks if he thinks he's still a weak rank C. He gets up and says he must be lamenting as he just started a fight with a rank B guild member. A man in glasses approaches and asks what he's doing with one of their guild members. Meanwhile, Wu is testing weapons. He watches and notices the length seems right and the weight also seems appropriate. Then he drops the notebook on the floor, picks it up and notices something, realizing it's the strategy for the giant skeleton guide and even wrote a step-by-step guide. He thinks those guys are just bleeding outside the Emperor's influence, but doesn't understand much. Seong continues watching and notices it's written that the elders started the attack again, using a completely new strategy. He flips through and reads that they interrupted the boss and are simultaneously aiming for the core. In the end, the veterans win, and there are also some things about growth. Wu thinks that maybe if he follows these notes but barely understands, when he hears a noise and looks back, Dong throws Man to the ground and asks if he dared insult his guildmates. He chokes him and asks if a mere rank C dares to put their hand on his guild. The master of the Harmonia Guild, being choked, says there's been a misunderstanding. The guard runs in and says that causing a scene like this is unacceptable and thinks the store is managed by the Hunters Association, and if it escalates and the association gets involved, things will get complicated. Hoon apologizes for the disturbance and says they started it and dared one of his guild members. And, as he remembers, the VIP service is part of the performance evaluation, and he should know they're the most important clients and expects him to deal with it wisely. The staff says there must have been a misunderstanding. Ho says they started the fight first and didn't even hear their side of the story. He's only on their side because they have the highest rank. The guard says that if they don't cooperate, he'll have to call the Hunter police. The Harmonia Guild looks surprised and Richard insults them. The demonic sword appears and asks if just because they're low rank, they should accept unjust treatment. They are confused. Bear gets desperate and asks where they got that from. Seong grabs his hand, which was placed on his body, and tightens it, saying he will know soon if he's lying or not. Richard notices his arm with marks and wonders how this guy is so strong. Wu says to check their guild training. A voice says there's no need. Man says they're manivela and apologizes, saying they'll just take care of business and leave quietly. The demonic sword doesn't understand and says he doesn't have to accept this and is helping them. The master of the guild says that if he helps, this will be resolved easily, but the rank S1 is him, and they can help each other grow, but he doesn't want to be like that guy, making himself out to be all-powerful for something that isn't even true and refuses to do something pathetic. Seong observes and thinks that he really misjudged these people and was the only one blinded by rank. Dong yells for them to get out. Wu watches and attacks him, knocking him to the ground and says that if he moves another step, he won't hold back, and that he won't let him threaten the guildmaster in front of him. This helps a lot. Meanwhile, Richard is holding a dagger and tries to attack from behind. Man pushes him and asks where he thinks he's going, saying it seems like they all need each other's help. Bear, lying on the ground, says to the manager to call the Hunter police. The manager asks if he's okay. Richard replies that he's far from okay. The manager apologizes for not knowing him before. The rank B guild is surprised to see it's the demonic sword. Seong says he understands and strikes Dong again, telling him to make sure these guys are handled properly and thinks it's better they leave. Hoon tells them to wait and forgive them. The Harmonia Guild walks, and Wu walks, thinking he still doesn't know why the Emperor is in this guild and still wants to find out about it. But one thing is clear, until someone calls him. Choi asks if what he chose before wasn't actually an ego sword. The master says to stop talking about that subject. They laugh, and the demonic sword thinks this place might be quite fun until a delivery arrives. Someone opens the door and it's Man, realizing it's a letter. He opens it and starts reading until he gets scared. Meanwhile, the protagonist is in his room and the editor is on the phone, saying that his writing has gotten more interesting lately. Tae thanks him and Gu says that if they secure the script for the next episodes, he asks if they can point to the next step and mentions that he's talking about the launch evaluation. The Emperor is surprised. The editor says the platform takes care of the evaluation and they'll have to see the results, but the internal feedback from the company was very positive. Yan says he'll keep writing. Gu says to wait a little longer. The protagonist hangs up the phone and realizes it worked, thinking that this means his writing was approved, and even if it's just an evaluation, it's huge. He'll take advantage of this momentum until the launch. He continues writing, very excited but with many dark circles under his eyes. Tae lies on the computer desk and thinks he's used everything that happened in the guild recently and has nothing left for the next episode. He thinks it would be good if something worth referencing happens. Meanwhile, the president is thinking, saying that this is really leading himself to madness. He thinks he can't believe it's time for that crazy party again. It's a banquet, a biennial event in the Korean hunter community, where the top 10 guilds gather for mutual exchange. It's not only lost its original purpose, but also turned into a battlefield of power struggles and guild rivalries. The so-called banquet has turned into a battlefield. Park thinks that it's himself who needs to meditate and clean up the mess. Just thinking about it is giving him a stomachache, and he doesn't even understand why the association has to organize this banquet. The ones who dominate the spotlight will be the 4 major guilds again, and at least the Gwangma Guild showed up, but it's not enough to surpass decades of long prestige from the best of the South. The 4 guilds, the same names, the same faces, and the same ranking again. It's hard to find it interesting until he notices something, gets surprised, and smiles, thinking that this year might actually be interesting. He tells the secretary to start preparing the banquet. The secretary doesn't understand very well since he hates this. He looks at the 6th place, Gahwa Mansasong. In another place, Do is looking out the window saying that time has passed quickly. Meanwhile, a young man is sitting on the floor, saying he's been wondering what everyone has been doing, and this is perfect. In another place, a bald man is standing with something in his hand, saying it's time to see those disgusting guys again. Meanwhile, in the mountains, someone is guarding a sword, saying they hope there will be someone worthy of testing their new sword at this banquet. In another place, several people are lying on the ground, and a woman with a cigarette in her mouth is saying that she really doesn't want to go. Meanwhile, in the Harmonia Guild, they are looking at the invitation. The members are very surprised and excited for the banquet. Man thinks it's just a rank C and wonders how he's supposed to go there. Seung says that their guild will be dining next to the rank S guildmaster. The guildmaster thinks about the people wanting to do whatever they want with him just because he's rank C. He feels bad and falls to the ground. The members run over and Woo says there's not even one day of peace. The protagonist tells them to say more about it. Seung says it works well and that he can get some material for his writing at the banquet, asking if he's participated before, saying it's been a while since he last went. Tae replies that he won't and remembers sitting there, listening to people talk about him, how he already passed through the 10th rank SSS gate, a true achievement worthy of being called a hero, and did all of this while still in high school. For now, he was grouped with other legendary hunters called the 12 Apostles, and would soon become the strongest hunter in the world. Meanwhile, the Emperor observes and wonders what this means, and why they are so excited about it. They toast to him. In the present time, Yeon becomes thoughtful and says that he just won't go. Man, lying on the ground, says he won't go either. They look surprised. The master quickly gets up and asks why their guild became rank S, and who he thinks is responsible for Gawa sitting in 6th place in the Korean guild rankings. The protagonist says he's been very busy lately. Man says that even so, he must attend the banquet and asks again if he's not going. The two reply that they will go. The master says it was a good choice. Tae thinks this reminds him of the past and he hates it, feeling like there's nothing he can do about it, but maybe it will provide some inspiration for his writing. Meanwhile, at the banquet, the president says he hopes to work with him again, and thinks that all the rank A guilds have entered, and the only one left, until photographers start taking pictures nonstop saying that the rank S guilds are entering. Park thinks that as soon as he thought about it, the devil appeared. The Partonen Guild enters, followed by 9 Dragons, Unlimited, and the guild No Target. The photographers comment on the guilds until a guild approaches the venue and it's the Gate of the Guard and their rank is first. People also comment on how amazing they are and how it's no surprise they're called the kings of the Korean hunter world. Then, a car arrives and the Harmonia Guild arrives with the Master and Vice arguing over who should have driven. They keep arguing until they realize something, and everyone around them is staring. The two feel embarrassed. People ask if this is the new Rank S guild and if they're just being used or simply careless. A voice says that the Guardian Gate has held the first position for 50 years, and this official event, the first banquet in 2 years, entering last and stealing the spotlight from the Guardian Gate, is a declaration of war. The Nine Dragons Guild asks if the Martial Emperor is laughing and says he might have softened with age, but he's not the type of person to let something like this pass. They ask who the old man is looking at and if it's the demonic sword, thinking they understand. And that's how it is. Every Rank S hunter is crucially active, and each one has the power to change the balance of power, especially the demonic sword, who reached Rank S in just 2 years. Someone every guild wants to recruit, and they know him for rejecting all guild offers. If there's a personal connection between these two, it could ruin all plans. Doe, smiling, thinks this is unexpected and imagined that someone like the protagonist would find an event like this uncomfortable. The Unlimited Guild also watches the demonic sword and thinks he's a genius, who hasn't yet broken beyond his limits, and he doesn't seem ready to cross blades with them. Then someone touches him, and it's a member of the guild asking who that person is. The Master of Unlimited says it's the demonic sword and not to worry, as it may be too much for someone his age, but he will soon reach that level. The boy points to Tay and says he can feel the impression of his power, and even if everyone there attacked at once, they wouldn't stand a chance. Then, a voice says to everyone, "Welcome to the banquet," and that the event has been prepared to thank and honor the hard work and contributions of the top 10 guilds in Korea, and hopes that tonight everyone can put aside all complications and enjoy the night. The president continues, saying that also, under the pride of South Korea, they remember with joy that everyone here is comrades. He bows his head in respect, thanks them, and calls the guild leaders to accompany him to the separate dining area prepared for them, while the guild members can enjoy the banquet there. Ho says to the master that it's time to go, and he asks if they're going to be eliminated there, and says maybe he should give up the leader position and run. Choi says not to worry too much, as once they eat something delicious, all the worries will disappear. Woo agrees. Man says he really will just eat. The leader of 9 dragons places something on the table and says he must have the desire for elimination today. The girl, emitting huge mana, says that this looks great. The two start arguing and the Master of Harmonia Guild thinks something is going on. 10 minutes ago, everyone was eating and conversing pleasantly, and Man wonders if the mood is better than he expected, thinking maybe he worried for nothing. He looks beside him and thinks it still feels like he's being suffocated here. The Master of the Harmonia Guild watches people eating. The bald man looks in his direction and says that he thinks they were a little negligent with the guest and really doesn't know much about this person, and would like to ask him to make a presentation, and asks if he would be willing to do so. Doe asks why he is asking this, as he only met him for the first time today. The bald man replies that earlier it seemed like he knew the demonic sword and asks if this could mean he's also connected to his guild leader. The Emperor of the Sword says he's not sure how this misunderstanding came about, but he has no connection. The bald man says he must have misunderstood. Man thinks his voice won't come out, and the bald man asks if he could introduce himself personally. The Master of the Harmonia Guild looks troubled, and the other leaders widen their eyes. The president thinks he's trying to start a battle, and this is getting interesting. Doe thinks he's showing displeasure. The bald man gets angry while Man still can't speak. The girl asks if this guy isn't serious, and thanks him for the show, saying she had told him to fix his distorted personality, and every time she sees him, she wants Anna to eliminate him. The bald man slams his hand on the table and says that her wish today must be for elimination. The girl gets up with her mana around her. The two glare at each other angrily, and the Master of the Harmonia Guild wonders how things ended up like this, and thinks he needs to clear this up first. He tries to say something, but the leader of the Unlimited Guild says he really can't control himself, no matter the time or place, and calls him pathetic. The two look at him, and the leader of the Parthenon Guild tells him to look at his own nose, as he's still acting all high and mighty on his own and is just a swordsman. The Unlimited leader breathes deeply, draws his sword, and calls him out, saying he challenges him to a duel. The Parthenon leader stands up and says he accepts and will settle this today. Doe glares at them, emitting terrifying mana, and says that it's enough. The leaders stare at each other angrily. The Emperor of the Sword says things are getting too heated, everyone is uncomfortable, and thinks it's better to stop there. They sit down, and the secretary thinks even the ranks are backing down in front of this magical power, and the pressure is overwhelming, as if the whole body is being weighed down. He looks beside him and is surprised to see that Man is resisting the magical power that even Rank S people struggle with, without a hint of trembling. He is the leader of the newly resurrected Rank 6 Guild, truly fainted. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the protagonist is shaking his pen, thinking that he really shouldn't have come here as there's nothing he can write. The guild members are all surprised and drooling over Hong and impressed by her beauty. The emperor breaks his pen and asks if the boy is also vomiting praise now. Wu replies no, and remembers her from his house, saying he couldn't tell if she was the same person he saw at his house. Yom realizes they're talking bad about her now and thinks her brother hates it so much here and wonders what he's doing here, thinking he's been acting out of character lately. Until someone arrives, bumping into everyone and walking quickly. Everyone looks surprised, noticing that it's the Warhound. He walks toward Hong and tells her to stop getting involved with these powers and calls her to fight.